The Vikings need a wide receiver sooner rather than later to pair with Justin Jefferson for the foreseeable future. What kind of guy should that be? What pairs with Justin Jefferson? Let's see if we can figure it out on the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You like that on 3, 1, 2, 3, you like it!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello. Welcome, everybody, to the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I am your host, your pal, and the kid you copied off in math class. My name is Luke Braun. You can find me on Twitter at LukeBraunNFL. You can find the show on Twitter at Locked On Vikings. You can find this show everywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts, including Amazon Fire or Roku, if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app on those smart TVs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel's Sportsbook, official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Today's show is going to be about a wide receiver I really like. And I'm glad I waited until after the combine to do this because it allows us to have a 40-time conversation as well. But we're going to talk about Jordan Addison today under the framing of how he pairs with Justin Jefferson. And I think this is becoming a more important talker as whispers, I guess I'll call them, continue to surface about Adam Thielen and possibly getting cut as a cap casualty. Darren Wolfson has hinted at it without really saying it. Ben Gessling and Andrew Kramer said that that's where they felt things were trending. I've heard other stuff kind of around the world too. It feels like that is more likely than unlikely, right? Nothing final yet. Maybe they work out a deal at the last minute. Who knows? A lot of things can happen. But for now, let's pencil that in and say it happens, just for the sake of the hypothetical. What do we do at wide receiver? Are we rolling with KJ Osborne as wide receiver 2? I'm not 100% comfortable with that. I think it can, you could argue it, like you could probably justify it if you squint really hard, but I don't think it would be the best state of that room headed into 2023. I think they would want to add somebody, whether that's a draft pick or a free agent or whatever. I would want it to be somebody young who can kind of stick around for a while, as they're going to extend Justin Jefferson. I hope they give another contract to KJ Osborne, but they won't do it this offseason, as a 5th-round pick and wide receiver 3 type. I think he plays out his contract year, and then you try to get something done on the eve, kind of like this time next year, I would hope. But I don't know, maybe they give him an extension as a wide receiver 3 in like June. Either way, those two guys are at least, you can pencil them in for 2023. But then beyond that, you kind of only are going to have Justin Jefferson, assuming they get the extension done this summer the way that they intend to. So what kind of guy, I get this question like every mailbag, what kind of receiver complements Justin Jefferson's skill set? And I don't think that there is a particular answer to that. Justin Jefferson, part of what makes him good is that he is good at everything. He's good at fighting after the catch. He's good at the catch point, at breaking off deep routes. He is good at chewing up route stems. He's good at releasing quickly off the line for short routes. He's good at being precise with, like, he's good. It's everything, right? And that was kind of coming out of the draft. Part of the draw of him was like, okay, he's like, there is nothing that you're asking him to do that he's bad at. And for a wide receiver, that can be really big. When I talked about Quentin Johnston, who I'm not a huge fan of, but if he works out, that's going to be why. Because he has, I really don't like some of the technique issues he has. So he does have that weakness, but there isn't like a pitch that's not in his bag, compare that to a Jalen Hyatt, who has kind of one pitch in his bag. But if you need that guy to start running whip outs and digs and, blaze outs and stuff and start doing more nuanced things, you're not going to have as good of a time as if you just, fast guy go zoom. And then he ran a 4.41, which is like, I think he needed to be faster than that for the style of wide receiver he is. So I'm like super out on Hyatt, but that is the kind of thing that differentiates Justin Jefferson from other wide receivers, that he can do anything. And that means that the guy you pair with him just has to be really good at something because Justin Jefferson can succeed in whatever pairs with that. And to get possibly more specific about it, you need a wide receiver who can win one-on-one. I don't care how you do it. You got to be good enough at something to win one-on-one. If it is a Jalen Hyatt type, and again, I don't like Hyatt himself, but a burner kind of guy like that, right? Go get Robbie Anderson if you want a real meme, or Chosen Anderson. That's his name now. But there's your bargain bin option. Somebody in that mold, right? The old Deshaun Jacksons, that can just take the top off the defense, go occupy a safety, and then that guy runs clear outs all day, and you can kind of have Justin Jefferson do whatever underneath. Now they can't cap him the same way. They've got to change their coverages. That can be a pairing. But what I really want is to punish them. I don't want to prevent them from capping Justin Jefferson, because that was the way that that defense has really attacked the Vikings passing offense was, okay, we're going to put a half safety on Justin Jefferson's side of the field, and he'll basically be bracketed all day. And if you have like a field clearing burner, that can take that safety away. That can force that safety cannot pass that deep route off. He has to go take it. He has to abandon Justin Jefferson. You might be able to get production that way. But you can also punish that if you have somebody, so okay, double Justin Jefferson all you want. And eventually defenses will just switch to like cover 1, double 18. And then it doesn't matter who's running what. You just have a double on Justin Jefferson because you forced the issue. I want to be able to punish that with somebody that can just win one-on-one. And that kind of brings me to Jordan Addison, who I think can be that. I'm really high on this kid. I really think that he can be the type of wide receiver that if, those games, like every wide receiver is going to have random games in their season where they get 30 yards because the defense just sold out. And the question becomes, okay, who had a big day then? There were a couple of those with Justin Jefferson. The playoff game with Justin Jefferson, he had like 47 yards or something like that. TJ Hawkinson goes off for $125. We need to have that guy, and preferably that guy isn't our tight end. That's a bit limiting. So I'm looking for how do you win one-on-one, and I adore the way that Jordan Addison wins one-on-one, and I can't wait to tell you about it. Before we get into that, though, let me talk to you about America's #1 sportsbook. It's FanDuel. FanDuel is, and of course, we are super excited at Locked On to be working with FanDuel as our sports gambling partner. New customers at FanDuel get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That means if you're new, you sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can put in your first bet, and even if you lose, that's totally fine because you get bonus bets back. You just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use, and bet on whatever. XFL money lines. Who's going to make a bunch of three-pointers in an upcoming basketball game? You can even smash a bunch of those together into a parlay and see if you can't chase a bigger payout. Don't miss your chance to get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Personally, I will be gambling on the Roughnecks. I don't think Vegas is caught up to them yet, and they are a tier above everybody else in the XFL right now until somebody decides to dethrone them. Thought the Brahmas maybe had a shot, but not so much. Once again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. If you would like video evidence of a lot of the stuff I'm about to talk about, you can go to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. A companion piece about Jordan Addison will be going up within the next week or so. So you can go check that out. And if anything super interesting happens in free agency, I'll post there. You can also find the salary cap video, the Beans video I've been talking about for the last month since it's been out. Please go watch that. It'll really help you make sense of all the contract stuff that goes on. Jordan Addison. Okay, let me get into the actual scouting report for this guy. And let's just get the elephant in the room out of the way right now. The 40 time. He ran, I think, a 4.46 was his official final time. I would call that meh for a guy who's, I think, billed as a fast receiver. It's not Jalen Hyatt, where that's all he has, and so that has to be elite, and it was just very good. With Addison, it needed to be very good, and it was just good. So it's still that kind of same thing where you're like, I hope you should have tested better. And so now we have to think about it. And this is a great opportunity to just talk about like the combine. Now that it's all in the books and everything's over, the combine tests, and I guess how I prefer to apply them. There are a lot of people who make composites based on these test scores that are things like Spark or the Feldman Freak List thing. People that will pool it all together and come up with some the relative athletic scores is I think the most popular one now, at least in the in my sphere, and I really like RAS that pull it all together in composite and say, okay, these are the athletic players, like RAS scale of 1 to 10, right? You're a 9.86. You're a really good athlete, right? But personally, I like to take a different approach. When it comes to these scores, I want to really try to think practically. What question is it answering? So with somebody like Jalen Hyatt has functional speed. And what I mean by that is you see it on tape. You can see him in situations where you need a certain amount of speed to win the route, and he always has it. Similarly, Jordan Addison has that functional speed. There is a clip that'll be in the Patreon video I put up about this, where it's a deep over, and the safety has he's running it ultimately against a safety, like an inside quarter safety. So think about the alignment there. The wide receiver, Addison, is lining up, I think, outside the numbers, and the safety is on the hash mark. Addison has to get as deep as that safety is and to the other side of the field where that safety is. Think about the head start that safety has just spatially, and he just runs right by him. And I think that safety does a pretty bad job breaking, so it's not all on him, but it is enough, and you can kind of see that speed, like that's taking the top off the defense. That's the definition of taking the top off the defense. So I was super surprised to see him run a 4.47. Now, a lot of wide receivers ran slower than they were supposed to, so maybe there was something going on that day. And this is kind of what pro days are helpful to do, especially when it comes to speed, because you can't run fast on accident. You know, you can have you can have an uncharacteristically good day throwing the football. Take like Will Levis, right? Well, no pressure, and pressure kind of causes his inaccuracy. So he threw really, really accurately at the combine, but that might not be representative. You can't be a whoopsie fast. That's not a thing, right? Like if you can run that fast, you can run that fast. There are, I think, certain things about the 40 that can be manipulated that don't necessarily translate onto the field. Like you can, if you're really good at getting out of sprinters blocks, like if you ran track or something like that, you might have an advantage and it might misrepresent you. So that could also be a thing. Maybe Jordan Addison just didn't do the sprinter thing well enough. And who cares, right? Because he's never going to be running a route out of that stance. So that's something to maybe observe. But also the pro day, maybe a bunch of players went out and did something dumb and stayed up late and they woke up tired, right? Maybe the 40 was a little too early in the morning or something like that. So I want to see the pro day. Can he be fast and like prove that? Or is it going to be another 4.46? And we go, okay, so this guy like genuinely has a limit to his top speed and we have to sort of work around that. But I'm asking not, is he a good athlete? I'm not asking something that vague. I'm asking, okay, there is a question about his speed. I see it on tape, but the measurements didn't match up. Is he fast? Everything else, there are no moments, at least where his athleticism betrays him, I don't think, except for his physicality, which we'll get to. But everything else sort of tracks. And to me, that's a lot of what the combine is for confirming things and not confirming nebulous things like Anthony Richardson is a good athlete, right? Well, we knew that. And if you just went to the combine asking, will he test well? You probably already had that prior pretty firmly ingrained into whatever analysis you were doing. So there's a marginal difference there. But seeing Anthony Richardson do well at stuff like explosion drills, like the jumps, I learned a lot about this because I hadn't really thought about this with quarterbacks, but how the jumps affect quarterbacking, and it's really a torque thing. And there's a like a rotational motion biomechanical thing to it that sort of reveals. We know Anthony Richardson has a cannon of an arm, but now we have a sense for why. And there is a natural athleticism that gives him a strong arm that comes from the lower half of his body. So that's the thing about the 40 time. I think if you were going to move Jordan Addison down on your board, it's the 40 time that is just okay, and it's the physicality, which I guess I'll quickly go over that weakness. He can't block, and this is why this makes him so not a Viking that it's disappointing, because I think he's going to be a really good player. But if you put him on the Vikings, you would have problems. He was really bad at like angle blocking from like condensed sets. So in the run game in a McVay system, usually they do a lot of running out of tight condensed formations, right? Bring the wide receivers in, condense to run, spread to throw. That's the whole thing, right? Or no, it's the opposite. But the Vikings run a condensed both for run and pass, right? So the wide receivers have really important blocking roles, because when you bring that receiver in, you bring a corner in, and now you kind of have to carry your weight. And the way that those run plays are designed is designed to sort of leverage that, to now have the most extreme example is the wide receiver will kind of try to down block a defensive end, and you have this horrible mismatch, but the angles are such that you give the wide receiver enough of an advantage where he can win the rep. But he's got to be able to do that. Jordan Addison is made out of paper. I mean, he gets ragdolled all the time, and he gets ragdolled downfield as well to any sort of physical contact. And most of it's legal. Like, I'm not talking about guys push him down and it's illegal contact. I'm talking he bumps into dudes who were just trying to get to their landmark, and he like totally falls over and wipes out. It's pretty frustrating. So there's a physicality to it. And anytime he does end up in a blocking situation, he gets blown up a ton, like an embarrassing amount. He is he is not the toughest guy on the field when the run game is going. And when it comes to that, like angle blocking or like digging out a nickel corner, where, okay, I am the slot corner, I'm in a tight split. The nickel corner is now functionally in the box, and he's got the B gap. I have to get to the B gap before him and essentially take him and bring him back out of the box, right? KJ Osborne does that very well because he's kind of a bigger, hulkier guy. Jordan Addison, not only can he not make it to that guy, but I've seen it times where he would just loaf it, where he would not make it to the guy, and the guy kind of gets in the gap, and he would just pull up. Like, dude, go get the safety then or something. Like, do something, and guys would just run right past him and make the tackle. Like, what are you doing? Really, really frustrating stuff, and it's going to drive coaches nuts. But of course, that's not the thing we care about the most with wide receivers. It's all about how they run and stuff. But those are kind of the two main weaknesses. But now let me gush about the strengths. That's going to be what's next. So 40 time notwithstanding, let's not put speed in the plus or the minus column right now. There is a change of direction athleticism that is undeniable, that like he can get off a route break and leave someone swinging. And so that works, right? He can run a route. And the thing that he loves to do, this is his fastball, and it's very, I don't want to freak you out, is very Justin Jefferson. Don't freak out too much about it. I don't think that's a complete comp, right? Because Justin Jefferson is bigger and has a lot more physicality and stuff. But this is a JJ move, and he's very good at this JJ move. The move is you attack, let's say you're running a go ball down the sideline. He will attack your inside shoulder and then kind of lean outside without losing any momentum. And maybe that's why it feels like he's fast, even though he's not testing fast, is because he can like veer off course and then veer back on course and not actually lose any of that timing. But he does it. It's very deliberate. His routes are very heady and smart and precise and intentional. And intention is really what I want to drive at here. There are reps where he has to go like 2 yards out of his way to get to your inside shoulder because you're giving inside leverage, just because he wants to get your hips turned. And he has to go really, really far out of his way to get your hips turned the way he wants you to have your hips turned. And then he'll cut back outside, you be in the blind be in the blind spot and then kind of hit the nitrous. And then he has like kind of an extra gear of speed. That's his fastball. That you put him on a go route, he will attack one shoulder, then break to the outside of it, all without losing any momentum or speed. Very smooth, very leany. And if you watch Justin Jefferson run go routes, he uses that exact same kind of leverage and technique a lot. Like you can see, maybe Addison watched a little JJ. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that. He has a really great sense too for like where that weak point is, and he understands coverages and his route concepts. There was a play from Justin Jefferson that I saw this year that I can't get out of my head, and it's because Justin Jefferson acknowledged me on it, where it was a deep over route that he made to look like a corner route because the rest of the play, it would like make sense that he was running a corner route there. And so he very specifically set it up like, I'm going to run this like it's a corner, and it's very next level stuff. And I've seen that on Jordan Addison's tape, and that's really, really exciting. It's why I think he's going to have a future in this league, even if it's not in a McVay system offense. And you know what? I have seen him win some tough catches and box guys out and actually go up and get the ball. He also, don't freak. I don't know what his production even was. But if it was bad, don't freak out about that. And if it was good, understand that his quarterback did not do him any favors. That USC QB is stinky. So all in all, I think I crowed about the weaknesses a lot more than I raved about the strengths. But the strengths of Jordan Addison are so exciting because when I scouted him, I didn't know about his 40 time yet. And so I just saw him as a guy that can run really fast and knows where to run. And that's so different from a lot of guys in the league that don't know, that just are, go boom, go fast because I'm way faster than this, high school sophomore playing corner across from me. And that's the way their whole career has been, that they don't have to develop any other techniques because they can just zoom by guys. But Jordan Addison has an intentionality to it that is genuinely reminiscent of an NFL veteran. And that combined with what looked like functional, really exciting speed made him a guy that I considered putting as my favorite wide receiver in the class. Now, don't flip. I haven't gotten to a lot of guys. If you think there's another guy that should be there, chances are I just haven't watched him yet. So give me a sec. But I still have Jordan Addison in the first round. And if the Vikings took him at 23, I would be pretty happy. I don't think they will, because of the blocking and the physicality problems, because they need their wide receivers to block. Like that is vital to the offense. And I know, wide receivers in the run game, who cares? That's not their job and stuff. I get that. And I understand that there's like a pass is greater than run value thing going on there. But it is like one of the pillars of the offense is that you can ask your wide receivers to block, because if you can ask your wide receivers to block and you can trust them not to screw up the play when they're doing it, you can use that in the play action game to run some absolutely disgusting corner routes where you release really hard inside as though you're going to dig out a nickel. And if it's a play action fake, a lot of times that DB will watch the wide receiver. And if that wide receiver is just kind of doing whatever, they'll kind of know. But it's such a good way to trick a nickel corner and to get him running away from the run play with you. Or, get him to think, oh no, this is a run play. He's trying to get me to run out of this box. I'm going to stay in the box. And you zoom right past him. The Rams lived for 5-6 years getting insane. I mean, Cooper Kupp was the god of this, and Justin Jefferson got his licks in on this as well. It was actually more of a KJ Osborne move, honestly. But you got to be able to block. You got to be able to set it up before you can subvert it. And if you just can't ask him to do that, if he's just, all right, we're just going to have you be outside the numbers and hope the dude doesn't play press, and he gets killed on press, like press releases and jams and stuff, again, made out of paper. So yeah, I just don't see him as a Viking, but I like him as a draft prospect. And I'm trying to be not too Viking centric with the draft, because obviously 94% of the players, 31 out of 32 players that I scout will end up on another team, right? So I kind of have to think, okay, this guy might not be good for the Vikings, but he's good for someone else. So I think I would love for the Vikings to sort of get over that wide receiver blocking thing for the sake of this player, but I'm not expecting them to. So that's where I'm at, but I think he would, to the point of winning one-on-one, because he knows where your leverage is and he has a great understanding of where you don't want him to be, he can win one-on-one. And therefore, circling everything all the way back around, he can complement Justin Jefferson. And let's keep an eye on that speed thing, because he might still be able to do the take the top off, and we'll just have him run clear outs all day and make the safety come. And then, be able to get Justin Jefferson back to a one-on-one that way by just popping the top off that defense with somebody really fast. Assuming, and 4.47 is not bad, right? Like that, you can totally do that with him. So there's that as well. Tomorrow, here's the deal. Darren Wolfson has been saying it that Friday will be the news dump day. I will put out a show on Friday, but keep an eye on Twitter. I'll do a little bit of content if there's like a big breaking piece of news. But otherwise, we'll talk about it all on Monday, whatever happens over the weekend. Next week will be free agency week. Of course, we'll do a mock draft Monday as well. But it's funny because Monday will be the first tampering day, but Locked On Vikings goes up before the window opens, before it's 1 Eastern or whatever. No, it's 1 Pacific, 4 Eastern, 3 Central or whatever. So Locked On Vikings will go up before the tampering window opens. So we'll have to talk about something else, and with all likelihood, we'll have something to talk about over the weekend. So Friday, we'll keep going on draft stuff, or maybe I'll do a free agency primer or something. We'll figure something out. See you all for that. And as always, Skull.